Imagine a world where the heroes on the screen are not as invincible as they seem, where smiles are masks and legends are built on pain. A hand almost totally destroyed by an explosion on a set, a smile that made women melt but behind which were hidden destroyed teeth and unbearable pain. A constant pain in her legs, an imbalance that forced her to endure invisible suffering while dancing and singing to please millions of spectators. These legends sacrificed much more than their bodies to stay in the spotlight. Their stories, filled with secret struggles, were carefully erased from the screen. But today, we are lifting the veil on 10 stars with secret disabilities and deformities. 1. Harold Lloyd is the daredevil who made audiences gasp, dangling from a clock tower 10 stories high in safety last. But there's a secret that no one ever told you about that stunt. Want to know the real story? The hand gripping that clock wasn't whole. It wasn't even close. In 1919, an on-set accident involving a prop bomb nearly killed him, taking 3 of his fingers and leaving his right hand shattered. But here's the twist. Hollywood didn't just hide the truth about the injury, it lied about it. They made the public believe he had recovered, but Lloyd wasn't using both hands when he performed those stunts. Instead, he was hiding behind a prosthetic glove. Imagine performing these life-threatening stunts while wearing a tight, sweaty glove that actually hurt your hand. Every grip, every climb, it was a constant battle between keeping the illusion alive and enduring excruciating pain. And that was just the start. The studios pushed him to keep this secret at all costs. Imagine being forced to hide your injuries while performing for millions. His contracts had clauses forbidding photos of his hand. He even had to use body doubles to keep the illusion intact. Every time he scaled a building or hung from a ledge, he was walking a razor-thin line between being Hollywood's hero and being exposed as broken. But here's the kicker. Insurance companies refused to cover disabled performers. So if his secret got out, his entire career could vanish. It wasn't just the danger of the stunts, it was the fear of the truth coming to light. And yet, Harold kept climbing. Because if he stopped, he wouldn't just fall in a movie, he'd fall from grace in the eyes of Hollywood and his fans. But that wasn't the whole story. The real shock came when the studios tried to hide a much deeper pain. 2. Clark Gable, the king of Hollywood, the man who made women swoon and men envy his rugged charm. His smile, legendary. But what if I told you that smile wasn't as perfect as it seemed? Behind the dazzling grin was a secret so painful, even his closest co-stars didn't know about it. By his early 30s, Gable had lost all his natural teeth to severe gum disease. And the studio? They rushed him into full dentures. But here's where it gets wild. Those dentures? They never fit quite right. Imagine trying to kiss a woman on screen, but instead of feeling smooth and natural, you're fighting pain with every move. Vivian Leigh once described kissing him as pressing your lips against a stove. But the real horror came when he wasn't on camera. Gable suffered from constant ulcers and nerve pain. He was in agony, but he couldn't let it show. So he covered it up, hiding the discomfort behind his famous charm, maintaining the illusion of perfection. And it wasn't just the pain. Gable had to live with humiliation. The dentures left him with chronic bad breath, a side effect of the infections beneath the surface. Joan Crawford reportedly kept peppermint oil close by just to survive their kissing scenes. And it didn't stop there. His mouth would whistle slightly during dialogue, a sound so noticeable directors had to scramble to adjust. But here's the darkest part, Gable's deep shame. He began avoiding eating in public. He'd cover his mouth when laughing. His private life? A constant battle with embarrassment. The man who was Hollywood's golden boy spent his nights soaking his dentures in a glass, terrified anyone might see the truth. Hollywood? They did nothing. Instead of offering help, they doubled down on the myth. As long as his smile shone on screen, they didn't care about the pain behind it. But Gable? He was living in constant fear. Fear that the man behind the mask would be exposed. Fear that the image of strength and masculinity he'd worked so hard to build would come crumbling down. And what happened next? Well, the truth of his secret would be buried for decades. But behind closed doors, the king of Hollywood was anything but perfect. 3. James Stewart's limp. James Stewart, America's golden boy, returned from World War II a hero, physically scarred by 20 combat missions over Nazi-occupied Europe. But what Hollywood didn't want you to know was that his limp wasn't just a sign of fatigue. It was a permanent injury, the result of nerve damage he sustained in combat. The once boyish, carefree stride had been replaced by a guarded stiffness that was hard to hide. But Hollywood wasn't interested in showing that reality. MGM, terrified that Stewart's injury would hurt his star power, demanded he retrain his walk in physical therapy. They went as far as blocking his scenes so that he would always be seated or filmed from the waist up, keeping the limp out of sight. For Stewart, it wasn't just about concealing an injury. It was about hiding a part of himself. Off-screen, the limp was a constant reminder of everything he'd experienced during the war. But the pressure to conceal it from the world weighed on him. Stewart was forced to play the role of the perfect leading man while silently battling the emotional and physical toll of his service. Hollywood had no place for a hero with scars. They wanted him flawless, and so Stewart played the part, carrying his pain in silence. In It's a Wonderful Life, the exhaustion in his eyes wasn't acting. It was a man who had been forced to keep up an image that wasn't entirely true. His heroism wasn't in the roles he played, it was in enduring the reality behind the scenes, a reality Hollywood chose not to see. 4. Judy Garland. Judy Garland captivated the world with her sparkling talent, but behind her dazzling performances was a body that was slowly breaking down. While filming The Wizard of Oz, Judy was already in pain, struggling with a leg imbalance that led to chronic back pain. To hide this, MGM designed special orthopedic inserts for her shoes, but the discomfort never truly went away. As if that wasn't enough, the studio pressured her to maintain a certain image. At just 16, she was given vitamin injections to keep her slim and energetic, substances that disrupted her natural growth and led to addiction. Judy was forced to perform through extreme exhaustion and constant pain, dancing and singing with a body that could barely hold up under the weight of expectations. And yet, the cameras never saw her struggle. Behind the smile, Judy was often fighting through agony. She was ridiculed for her posture, criticized for gaining weight, and pushed to perform beyond what any body could handle. The studio owned her, her image, her talent, and even her pain. Judy Garland's greatest performance wasn't just in front of the camera. It was the invisible battle she fought every day, smiling through tears, dancing through pain, all while the world saw only the sparkles. She didn't just perform through suffering, she was sculpted by it. 5. Lon Chaney, Jr. Lon Chaney, known as the Man of 1,000 Faces, wasn't just a master of disguise. He was a man who put his body through unbearable pain to achieve the most realistic performances in cinema. For roles like The Hunchback of Notre Dame, Chaney would strap a 70-pound metal and leather apparatus to his back, contorting his body into grotesque shapes. The weight was so extreme that crew members had to pry it off him between takes just so he could breathe. But it didn't stop there. For The Phantom of the Opera, Chaney used wires to stretch his nostrils and hooks to pull his face into an unnatural, skull-like shape. The pain? Excruciating. He was often temporarily blinded by the chemicals he applied around his eyes to create the illusion of a monster. Yet, he pushed through it all. When asked why he refused lighter prosthetics, his chilling response was, "Quasimodo suffered. I must suffer too." Chaney's dedication to realism was so intense that it slowly destroyed him. The self-inflicted pain took its toll on his health, leading to a collapse of his immune system. By the time he died at 47, the man who had transformed into countless monsters had become one himself, not by makeup, but by the unimaginable sacrifices he made for his art. 6. Peter Lorre's just a master of villainy on screen. His appearance became his most defining feature. Born with deformed feet, Lorre's gait was unusual, and by the time he reached Hollywood, he walked with a noticeable limp. Studios didn't offer medical help. They used it. He was cast as creepy characters, criminals and cowards, always the villain, never the hero. His physicality became a part of his typecasting, a limitation that the studios embraced but never tried to change. Lorre's feet, turned in at odd angles, became a part of his on-screen persona, but it wasn't just his walk that defined him. His physical appearance, combined with his high-pitched voice, pushed him into roles that no one else wanted. And, despite his immense talent, The studios kept him in this box, never giving him the chance to break free. When Laurie tried to change his image or direct his own work, the studio sabotaged him, refusing to let him evolve beyond the roles they had assigned him. The weight of this typecasting wore him down. By the 1950s, Laurie was openly battling exhaustion and struggled with alcoholism, something that only further isolated him. He gave everything to his roles, but Hollywood never gave him the chance to escape the mold they had set for him. Behind the sinister villains he portrayed, there was a man trapped in a body that studios couldn't or wouldn't see past. 7. Barbara Payton Beauty. Once stopped traffic, but by the end of her life, she was nearly unrecognizable, her body shattered, her career forgotten. In the 1950s, Payton was one of Hollywood's rising stars, gracing the arms of A-list actors and earning a fortune. But her private life was falling apart, torn apart by scandals, turbulent affairs, and a growing dependence on alcohol. Then, in the mid-1950s, her life took a darker turn. After allegedly falling down a flight of stairs, Payton suffered a devastating back injury, possibly crushing vertebrae and damaging her spine. The pain was constant, but the studio remained silent. There were no public statements, no hospital photos, just whispers behind closed doors. Hollywood, which had once adored her, abandoned her when her beauty was no longer enough. With no roles, mounting medical bills, and a broken body, Payton was left to survive in a world that had chewed her up and spit her out. As the years passed, Payton's back pain worsened. She was often seen in public hunched over, unable to stand up straight, a shadow of the glamorous woman she once was. Yet, despite all this, she never stopped fighting. In her memoir, I Am Not Ashamed, she bared her soul, recounting the pain and betrayal she had endured. Barbara Payton's story wasn't one of scandal. It was one of survival in a world that discarded her when she could no longer play the part. 8. Merle Oberon's rise to fame seemed like a Hollywood dream. Cast as the beautiful and mysterious Kathy in Wuthering Heights, she became a symbol of fragile elegance. But the truth behind her stunning looks, it was a carefully crafted illusion built on secrets she was forced to hide. In 1937, Oberon was in a near-fatal car accident that left the left side of her face shattered. Her cheekbone was crushed, and the nerves in her face were severed. Half of her face became paralyzed, a disfigurement so severe that she had to rely on special lighting invented by her husband, cinematographer Lucien Ballard, to conceal the scars. The soft, shadowless illumination helped blur the damage, but the truth remained hidden from the public eye. But that wasn't the only secret she had to hide. Merle Oberon wasn't just the exotic beauty the studios wanted her to be. She was also of mixed-race heritage. Born in Bombay to an Anglo-Indian mother, Oberon was forced to adopt a completely fabricated backstory, claiming she was born in Tasmania to a white British family. Hollywood, obsessed with racial purity, couldn't accept her true identity. Every day, she endured painful chemical treatments to lighten her skin, suffering burns and rashes, just to maintain the illusion of the perfect exotic leading lady. Merle's struggle wasn't just physical, it was a battle of identity. She had to reject her own heritage, lie to her family, and bury the truth about who she really was, all for the sake of fame. In the end, Oberon became both a legend and a ghost, immortalized in black and white, while the full color of her truth was left behind. 9. Gene Tierney's. Gene Tierney's beauty was so striking that it earned her the title of the most beautiful woman in the world. Her performance in Leave Her to Heaven earned her an Oscar nomination, and she became the embodiment of Hollywood's ideal woman. But behind the flawless face, Tierney was battling an invisible struggle that no one saw on screen. Gene suffered from severe color blindness. She couldn't distinguish between reds and greens. It might sound like a minor issue, but in the world of Hollywood fashion, it was a constant nightmare. Costume designers would ask her opinion on outfits, but she had no idea if they were blue, green, or red. To cope, she memorized the fabric textures and the position of the garments on the rack, but the pressure to maintain the perfect image never stopped. She couldn't let anyone know the truth. But that wasn't the only challenge. As her career soared, Gene's mental health began to deteriorate. Battling depression, anxiety, and the effects of the studio's demanding control, she was eventually given vitamin treatments, code for the chemical cocktails used to keep stars compliant. The toll of it all finally became too much. In 1953, after a public breakdown, Tierney was institutionalized and subjected to electroshock therapy, which led to permanent memory damage. Her decline was a tragic contrast to the graceful, perfect image Hollywood had crafted. When she returned to acting, she couldn't even memorize her lines without the help of cue cards. Tierney, once known for her sharp beauty and elegance, had become a shell of her former self. Hollywood polished her image, but it could never fix what it had broken inside. The face the world adored was still there, but behind it, Tierney was fading, lost in the fog of a life controlled by others, with no room left for herself. 10. Bela Lugosi. He became a legend with just one role, Dracula. His stiff, otherworldly walk and hypnotic gaze made him the face of horror, but behind those piercing eyes was a man in constant pain. Lugosi didn't just play a monster, he was one too, trapped in his own body. What audiences didn't know was that Lugosi's spine had been permanently damaged by shrapnel during World War I. By the time he stepped onto the Hollywood stage, the pain was constant, sharp, and often debilitating. His stiff posture wasn't an act. It was the result of a broken body that couldn't move freely, and that hypnotic gaze. It wasn't just a performance, it was Lugosi struggling to focus. Without his thick prescription glasses, which he couldn't wear on screen, he could barely see a few feet ahead, turning every glance into an agonizing effort. But the pain didn't stop there. Lugosi's injuries were so severe that he was forced to rely on heavy medication just to get through the day. And yet, he kept going, driven by a relentless desire to maintain his image. The studio never showed the man behind the mask. Instead, they encouraged the myth, letting his pain fuel his eerie performance while quietly ignoring the man who was crumbling behind it. As his health deteriorated, Lugosi's struggle became harder to conceal. He stumbled over set pieces, tripped over cables, and was often seen clenching furniture between takes, trying to hold himself together. But Hollywood didn't care about his suffering. They only cared about Dracula. And as the pain worsened, the man behind the monster slowly vanished, leaving only the legend still walking stiffly, but now with nothing left to hold him upright. Finally, these Hollywood legends, often seen as symbols of perfection, actually paid a devastating price to stay in the spotlight. Behind every smile, every iconic role, were hidden pains, secrets, and sacrifices that the industry preferred to ignore. Their stories serve as a brutal reminder that, even in a world of glamour and fame, silent suffering can be the most shocking revelation. As their images continue to shine on screen, it's time we remember the humans behind the stars and the sacrifices they made to keep their names etched in history.